Welcome, Shine Campus, to our coffee hangout. I hope everybody's doing well this morning. We are going to talk today about the common marriage mistake that leads to tons of divorces. So, um, I was hearing something, and the way that it was put was in terms of like masculine and feminine energy, and then they kind of link some things together. And I'm going to talk in um, or at least with the idea that says it doesn't really matter. To me, it doesn't matter, who's who. The point is that these two things exist in relationship and lead to tons of divorces. Now, they didn't necessarily make that link, it was about something else. And so, what I know is that in working with people, um, that this is what happens. That there is a theme that goes on. Okay, so here's the theme. There's two things that are needed in a relationship. One of the things is a search for freedom and the idea that we feel independent and capable um, and are in control, right? That's one side of things. The other side of things is there's a need to be secure about the scenario that we're in. So you have these two sides, and usually what happens is there is a fight that's totally misunderstood because one person is requesting that there's a sense of security and the other person is requesting that there's a sense of freedom. And while those might seem opposite, they actually go together and belong together and can really benefit each other. The hardest thing is that in our minds, one is we're probably not aware of the freedom that we're seeking, and we're not aware of the security that we're seeking. Instead, we're usually looking at the behaviors of each other and just reacting based on that. So I'll give you an example of what that looks like. So instead of a partner feeling like, um, man, um, I'm going to have a hard time, maybe going out with my girls and being able to hang out because my partner doesn't want me to do that, right? And so the summation that person makes is, oh, my partner is trying to trap me somehow, right? And meanwhile, the partner is like, man, that person always wants to go out and leave. What's wrong with me? Right. So you have these conversations that don't really look like the thing that they actually are. And then there's an argument like, you always want to go out. And the other person says, like, you always want to keep me in. And so this conversation leads to the wrong thing and just kind of ends up creating a separation. And I think usually people sum it up by, we're just not compatible or we don't go together. Well, if we really understand what those two things are, the idea of freedom and the idea of security, then we actually will understand that they probably pair better than we realize that they do if we can help each other out. All right. So what does it take to help each other out? And this is kind of the definitions that you need to start getting on the right track. So first of all, in order for us to be free in any scenario, to actually be free, not just a moment, but a real sense of freedom, there has to be some kind of discipline. What creates freedom in our worlds or in our opportunities is not the idea that we just are blasé and we don't care. That actually creates a different kind of trap. What creates the real freedom is the discipline that we have in certain areas. Okay, so that's for freedom. For security, what creates security is when we are able to focus on the things that we have versus the things that we don't have, right? So the reason we don't say that security comes from or freedom comes from someone else, like they didn't let me go out, created my lack of freedom, or they let me go out, created my freedom, is wrong. The reason it's wrong, we'll get to that. And then also the reason that it's wrong that somebody would say like they helped me to feel secure, or the idea that they created my security is because at that point in time we become powerless to somebody else being able to create that situation. And in life, there are both. There are a lot of scenarios that we can say like that doesn't lead to my security, and they still are. It's still in my life. So then, how do I achieve security at that point in time, right? So it's really a focus on. It's two things. It's us being disciplined creates the freedom that we need, and then us being able to focus on what we have creates the security that we need. Okay. So how do we turn that back into the relationship scenario? Well, the way we turn it back into relationship scenario, it's two things. One, if we know this about each other, I think my first responsibility in relationship is to help to try to create these two senses in the relationship. So how do I develop security in my relationship? Well, I develop security in my relationship by being more focused on the things that we have, and highlighting those things and growing new scenarios. So, besides the words, what does that look like in relationship? Well, being able to mention the things that I'm grateful for in the relationship, being able to be aware of what I actually do have in the relationship, whether it's my family and how it's growing, whether it's the resources that we have, all the things that we have, being more aware of those scenarios, and then growing more, knowing the path that we're on as a couple to keep growing our relationship, our life, and our family. So those two things start creating a sense of security. Even as I say them, you probably can start looking at that for yourself as well. Now, what would keep you from a security point in that moment is you being more aware of like what you don't have. Why don't we don't have this and we don't have that? We don't have um, we don't have a bigger house, or we don't have a certain kind of car, or I don't have the communication that I want. Like all those things start creating the lack of security inside of your body. Okay. And if I'm thinking that way, it's going to create a lack of security in my relationship for me and my partner. What about the idea of freedom? How do I grow that freedom in my relationship and for myself? Well, it's discipline, right? And so, what are the conversations that I need to have that start creating a surrounding around our relationship with what are the, with the things that I will be doing in my life, or with the things that will be in our relationship that allow us to be free? All right. So the more I can label those pieces and demonstrate and show up that way as a disciplined individual, it helps to create that sense of freedom in our relationship. And then for myself, it's the same thing. The hardest thing about freedom is that inside of us, we know all the areas that we're not disciplined in. And so we don't not feel free because somebody doesn't let us out, or um, because somebody is trapping us for whatever reason. We don't feel free because we know inside of us there's a struggle going on, or there's some other thing going on that is happening. And so and restricting our real freedom. And so these two scenarios help us to switch things over in our mind so that we can be focused on creating these scenarios in our life. It's not, either one is not reserved to the husband or wife. You might in your mind or in your home be able to label like that's more my wife, or that's me as a husband, or whatever the scenario is. You might be able to label those things, but it's not reserved for one. Each person will have a need, in a sense, for um, more or one or two of these scenarios. So the goal is to create it in your relationship. So the mistake that usually leads to tons of divorces is the idea that we fight over um, I'm not free, or I want to be free, or there's not a sense of security in my relationship. The undoing of that is understanding the meaning of both of those things. That freedom comes from us being able to be disciplined, while the idea of security comes from us being able to focus on the things that we do have and being more aware of those things than anything else. If we're able to put those things together in our relationship, if I interact on that in my relationship, everything changes, and it gives me a chance to create a different kind of interaction in my relationship, and have freedom and security in my relationship. All right, you guys enjoy your week, and we'll talk to you soon.